Happy Friday, everyone. Josh of Severe Weather, welcome this afternoon, and I appreciate you joining me here. We continue to talk about tropical action picking up across the Atlantic as you would expect in August, with some action over Africa. We really need to be watching more closely here. Now, the problem is we've got a lot of time, so forecasts you're seeing today and this week are probably going to change quite a bit, but unfortunately, not maybe as much time as you'd like. We are heading into the meat of the season. I've heard that the bell often gets rung around August 20th, and then that's the meat of the season. We're not far from that now, and it is time to start watching more closely. So I'm going to share my screen and give you all a technical discussion of what's going on across the tropics and notable storms and future storms that I'm watching. And obviously, if you're in the United States, now is the time to be prepared. It won't be long before we do have hurricanes affecting portions of the U.S. as well as the Caribbean islands and Central America as well. So please subscribe and like the video if you haven't had a chance to. Share with your friends who are in the areas that are often affected by tropical systems. We are going to have more regular videos coming up here. I know I was a little bit less active earlier in the season, but things are now picking up. So first off, I'm going to take you all to the Zoom Earth platform here, showing you what's going on worldwide. The green dots indicate where we have tropical storms. The purple dots indicate where we have areas of investigation or non-tropical lows. I'll get to the Atlantic in a moment. I do want to show you the Pacific as we do have a few notable storms. The first one is Tropical Storm Ivo, which may get very close to hurricane intensity. Fortunately, it's heading away from Mexico and just bringing them some higher surf and no real threat to land. Out ahead of it, we have Henriette, which has actually weakened to basically a remnant low, just lost its tropical characteristics. But interestingly, as it bends away from Hawaii, it will move back into a more moist and warmer environment. So we're going to see a storm north of Hawaii actually strengthen, which is highly unusual, but fortunately no direct threat to Hawaii. So these two storms will be fish storms and will continue the action in the Pacific. In the Western Pacific, we do have something we're watching more closely here now. Tropical storm, I think it's Podul, and heading across the Philippine Sea. And right now on its track, it is expected to strengthen to typhoon status. And right now the track takes it into northern Taiwan and eventually China. So if you're in Taipei and those areas, you're definitely going to want to watch this more closely. As always, there's some uncertainty. So those in the northern Philippines, those across Okinawa and those islands all need to be watching this system. But for the most part here, I'm concerned with the Atlantic, so we're going to talk about that. This is former Tropical Storm Dexter, post-tropical now, will be weakening as it moves closer to Western Europe. Early next week, you can see it's expected to drop down from near hurricane intensity to just a 35-mile-per-hour low. We do have an area we're watching, though, Invest 96L. Now, odds have actually lowered on this intensifying into a depression and storm, but it's still possible. And we have a low pressure area that is forming east of North Carolina, non-tropical for now, but has the possibility of becoming a depression, albeit it's a very slim chance. And elsewhere, we have disturbed weather over Florida and the Bahamas with a surface trough, which has a very slim chance of forming. And things are pretty quiet until we get to next week. Here's a look at the U.S. You can see it's been pretty wet across Florida and across the coastal southeast. Fortunately, nothing set to organize at this point. We have kind of a surface trough right in here across Florida. Lots of rain falling in the Bahamas. Drying out now across most of the southeastern coast once you get north of Florida, but still some moisture in play here across coastal North Carolina and up into the mid-Atlantic states. Powerful low pressure system here over Montana. That is going to trigger more severe storms over the north central part of the country. We had, I don't know if you want to call it a derecho, but a nasty round of storms overnight in North Dakota, moved into Minnesota, and that has weakened. But the poundings keep continuing here in the north central states. Unfortunately, just a very active pattern across the north central U.S. And you can see the next trough digging into the northwest. That is going to push more active weather, mainly across this area here. So more severe weather coming up and over a big ridge of high pressure, which is baking much of the central United States and the West. In fact, some of them are seeing their hottest temperatures all summer. I saw that Wichita hit 100 for the first time this summer, which is awfully rare. Typically, we get there a lot earlier in the year, but it'd been pretty wet and on the cool side, at least compared to what we're used to. Now, across the Atlantic, you'll see that things are beginning to pick up, especially off the African coast. Here's the remains of Dexter over the north central Atlantic. That no threat to land at this point. Here is 96L. We do have a broad surface trough here east of Florida, and we do have an area that we're going to watch for low pressure to form here. We also could briefly see a weak low form here as it moves and sends moisture up into the northeastern and north central Gulf states, but no real signs of development from that. The area that I'm going to talk about quite a bit in the coming days is actually getting ready to emerge from Africa, a very large wave that models have been latching onto for several days now, having the opportunity to develop into at least a stronger storm, probably a hurricane. And quite frankly, I think it'll be our first hurricane of the season. Now, if we take a look at water temperatures and how they've evolved across the Atlantic, you'll see we started the year off very warm across the eastern Atlantic. And a lot of that's the remnant heat that we had from the last couple of seasons where things were just so warm. In fact, record temperatures last year across the main development region of the tropics. The Gulf started off very warm as well. Now, as we move this on into motion, you're going to see that off of Africa and over the main development region, we've actually cooled off significantly. Now, it's warmer than it was in January, but it is cooler than the average. And we started the year above average. So really not much warming across the main development region here. As we moved into the spring and early summer, what you'll notice is that water temperatures in the subtropics, that is basically the eastern Gulf over into the southwest Atlantic, have actually warmed significantly and are near record levels here in this portion of the Atlantic Ocean. And that's why I definitely think the East Coast should be on alert. I've talked about it multiple times this year, but now we may have actually something tracking in that direction, not next week, but the following week that we need to watch. You can see where the warming has continued, and overall, just a very warm look across the subtropical portion of the basin. It's not that it's not warm enough to support storms down here, but we don't have the fuel to have a storm rapidly intensify. So the concern then is that storms are going to be very challenging to figure out how they develop out in here. But once storms make it into this area, they're going to strengthen if conditions are right. And we're getting into the time of the year where that's more and more likely to happen. So less time to act. So that's why I am going to show you models that indicate what are going to happen here beyond a week, because not much may happen over the next 5 or 6 days. It's once things kind of get past 50 west and really 60 west, which is where the islands are and just east of Bermuda, is when we start to see less time to act and more action in the tropics. So heavily weighted to areas closer to land, unfortunately, is what we're looking at. And you can see the tropical cyclone heat potential is quite high when you get closer to places like Florida and Cuba and the Northwest Caribbean and the northern islands here as well. So most of our fuel for stronger storms is closest to land, unfortunately. Not that that's new, but that's where we're sitting this year, and that's what we need to be watching here. Where storms are coming off of Africa lately, they've been coming to an area where there's just a limit to really how much they can do, how much they can really compile into a legitimate storm. And we've had things like dry air coming down, cooler air come down from here. Unless storms are coming at 5 north, they're really missing out on this warm water. And a storm down here is going to be awfully close to the equator and eventually running into South America. So we haven't had an ideal setup at this point. So that's why this wave we've been watching for a few days is unlikely to form into anything through the weekend. And the chances drop from 60% down to 40% to see it develop. And in my opinion, it may not do anything until it's all the way up into here. And by then it's already turning away, we think. So right now, this weekend's not looking all that awful, not super busy yet. This area here, just a 10% chance. So we have a 10 here and we have a 0 here for this weekend. Not very high chances if you ask me. So anyway, I do want to show what's going on here in the Gulf of America, in the Caribbean, in the Southwest Atlantic. And I'm going to turn off the IR and actually go to the water vapor and show you what's going on in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere here. Let me see if I can get that going for y'all. Well, I had this earlier. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to type in WV here because I know what the website is. All right, here we go. So the areas in red indicate very dry air in the mid and upper levels. Areas in blue and green indicate moisture in the mid and upper levels and instability typically. And so you can see here that We've got two upper level low pressure systems, one over the west central Gulf, slowly moving west towards Mexico. And then we've got kind of a broad but well-defined upper level feature that's been here for a few days now. It's really a squeeze play. It's tough to get something to form between two upper level lows. What you really need to have is a large area of high pressure in control across this area to see something form. And because we've got kind of this wind shear coming from both of these, you can see the southwesterlies here. From here, you can see the easterly and southeasterly wind shear. It's just really tough to get anything more than just disorganized thunderstorm activity. So the European ensemble still indicate a very slim chance that something weak tries to form in here over the next couple of days. But in my opinion, it's not really going to be anything more than just a rainstorm, just something that we have to watch. This area that is forming here east of the Carolinas, you can see the intensity forecasts are quite low. It's just a very slim chance of anything happening. I'm going to see if I can, I guess I can't do anything about it, but I'm going to move this on in the time for you all to see just a very limited shot at anything forming here. So in my opinion, the Hurricane Center is going to eventually killing this thing off by the time we get to the weekend. Let's take a look, though, at this area that we're going to have to watch near the Florida Keys this weekend. And I'm going to pull up some tracks and cones just to see you all, show you all what things are showing up on the European ensembles. And again, nothing of real significance. We're talking 20 to 30 mile per hour winds, mainly over the water. Really, it's just a rainstorm at this point. But, you know, if you want to have something to track, we can track an upper level to mid-level low here that may develop a weak surface low that heads up towards Louisiana or Western Florida, or Mississippi, and Alabama. So the timeline on that looks like it's going to be sometime on Tuesday when it comes in, and lingering moisture continues into the middle of the week, but unlikely to form at this point. Florida is still at risk of seeing heavy rain, but not really at risk of any kind of stronger wind or anything like that. Same goes for the northern Gulf Coast. So for the rest of the Caribbean, we've got a lot of unsettled weather along our monsoon trough, but nothing should organize for two reasons. One, the wind shear coming out of the subtropics, and two, the fact that we are hugging South America here. So we'll watch this area as it heads up towards Central America, but right now I'm not really expecting it to have a good chance of developing into anything. A little break in the rain here in Trinidad, but you are going to see more rain moving in later today and tonight as that monsoon trough stays active. Same goes for Tobago and certainly for the countries of South America here. Now we turn our attention to the deep tropics. This is Invest 96L out in here. It's trying to make a little bit of a comeback, but it does not have really a closed circulation. It's surrounded by a ton of dry air off to the north and east, slightly cooler ocean waters, and it's actually heading into an area here where there's even less moisture to play with. However, it's juicing things up. So it's kind of the sacrificial lamb for what I'm more concerned with, and that's this next area of low pressure, which is going to be tracking next week into the central main development region here. So the dry air that this system here is fighting is going to yield to slightly more moist air. And so I do believe this is going to have a better chance of developing after it comes off the African coast. It may take a few days, but you can see that's not the only one, but that's the one of greatest concern here over Senegal and Mali and West Africa. There's another one behind it here. We'll obviously have to watch, even another one. So every couple of days, we see a new wave emerging. This is actually not uncommon for this time of the year, but it's a huge flip from what we just saw a week ago, as we've had a combination of an MJO move through. That is the Madden-Julian oscillation that enhances moisture. We've had a Rossby wave, and we've had a Kelvin wave. I'm not going to get into what all those are today. I took a class 20 some years ago that taught me that, and I've kind of forgotten it, but I know what it does. So I'll be honest with you all on that. And you can see with the MJO, it's not just unsettled across Africa, but we're going to see more coming in from the Indian Ocean. So heading into a busier time, to say the least. Okay. Here's a look at 96L beginning to make a little bit of a move here. If we take a look at the visible satellite, you're going to see it just doesn't look very well organized. Thunderstorms are actually displaced from whatever center is here. But over time, you can see those thunderstorms have increased. And obviously, we're going to keep our eye on seeing if that trend is going to continue. But right now, it's got a long ways to go, I think, before becoming anything of significance. The ship's model doesn't make it anything until it gets into early next week. The reason why, it's going to head into some warmer water, and it's going to go into areas where there's more heat content, but also it's going into a slightly drier environment. and an area with stronger wind shear. So this thing is going to be fight, fight, fight the whole time as it comes northwest. But having said that, there's still a chance by the time we get to next week that this becomes a tropical storm. And the trend you can see on the majority of our models keeps it to the east of Bermuda. There's kind of a split, though, some that go to the right and some that keep it weaker and go closer to Bermuda here. And I'm going to show you that split in just a moment here. The models that are keeping it south and maybe show a concern to Bermuda are these models over in here, which show it weakening and fading. The models that turn it to the right and keep it well to the east of Bermuda are the ones that show it strengthening. So either way, I don't think we have too much to be concerned with at this time. I had something else loaded I was going to show you all, and that's okay. We'll come back to it later on in future videos. But here is the European possibilities for tropical cyclone activity. Pretty low, but there's a small chance in the northeastern Gulf of America. Slightly medium chance, better chance here over the central Atlantic. And then the area coming off of West Africa has a much better chance. This is what's left of Dexter. It's already technically post-tropical, so we don't worry about that. This is the monsoon trough here that's unlikely to form. Now, as we move this along to early next week, you're going to see that this area that emerges off of Africa actually has a better chance of developing when it gets to about 40 west. It is gaining some latitude, though. So in the Caribbean, that's not a bad thing if you're in the islands to see it gain latitude. It doesn't mean you're out of the woods, but the more latitude it gains, the less likely it pulls a barrel or something similar to that. You can see, though, by Wednesday, whatever's over the Gulf is moving inland. The chances really aren't that great for this system here, 96L, to do much, but it could happen. As we move this along a couple more days, you're going to see, other than low pressure in the southeast, really nothing to be too worried about. But here's our next wave, a high risk of becoming a tropical cyclone, and a little bit lower chance, but a chance that it's a tropical storm here by Friday. And not really a threat to be a hurricane yet, but that could change. I'm going to show you next weekend, and you'll see we do definitely have the opportunity for this to be a tropical storm moving by or just to the north of the islands. And Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands are still in this area of possibility, albeit the more likely path is going to be more to the north and east. Still unlikely to be a hurricane at this point, but the chances are starting to climb when we get to next weekend. Again, it is more than a week out, so you can't put too much faith in what this shows, but I've been tracking trends for a few days that continue on with this idea. So hard to kind of ignore that idea. And as you can see here, the probability of this to become a hurricane starts to spread, but does grow some into the Bahamas. It grows towards Bermuda. So bottom line, I think there's a better than possibility, better than small to medium possibility this will become a hurricane. But where exactly it's going to be is still way up for grabs. And this is next Wednesday, the 20th. And you can see strong signal for a hurricane, but very low confidence in where exactly it's going to be. We back this up with the subseasonal forecast. And you're going to see next week that the action in the tropics turns out to be twice the average across the Atlantic Basin, lower across the Eastern Pacific, a little higher in the Central Pacific, and about average elsewhere. As we move to the following week, it doubles to almost 150% higher than average in the Atlantic, meaning a likely hurricane, at least one, maybe two storms in the Atlantic Basin during the week of the 18th. And then I do think it quiets down some after that, closer to average. We get a bit of a break after that MGO passes, and we stay near average for the first portion of September. This could change, but this is what we're looking at for the time being. And the fact that it's predicting one storm the week after next, but 2.5 times the typical cyclone energy, indicates that it thinks there'll be a stronger storm, probably a stronger hurricane. Here's where the European AI is showing our storm tracks, and you can see it doesn't really even develop 96L. It barely develops what's in the Gulf and doesn't really develop what's off the East Coast, but it does develop what's coming off of Africa here into a tropical depression or tropical storm over the middle Atlantic here. This would be next Monday into Tuesday. Here's Wednesday, Thursday, and as you can imagine, the tracks are going to diverge, but they all pretty much show a tropical storm, maybe even a hurricane at this point. And then as we carry this on, we're going to see more substantial, let me zoom in here so you all can see, more substantial tracks, and some towards Florida, very few over the Caribbean, more to the east of Florida. but all showing a tropical storm or hurricane at this point here around the 18th and 19th. So I'm going to back it up and show you that there's very little support for something going through the islands in the Caribbean, more support for something going just to the north, and some support as well for a storm that forms sooner and recurves, which was, of course, going to be what we all want. But unfortunately, we're all seeing this at this point, and that's towards the middle of the week after next. So after that, a lot of uncertainty, as you can imagine. I will show you the remainder of the East Coast, so you can see that if you take this literally, you see a strong support for hurricanes, but you also see the possibility of a hurricane anywhere from the central Gulf of America to Florida to moving up the East Coast to well out to sea. That's highly uncertain at this point. The European ensemble shows, again, not very much confidence. A few going towards Florida and into the Gulf, but the majority going up the East Coast or even recurving out to sea at this point. I had this loaded for y'all, but I was going to show you. Let's do this. Chrome and Max. Well, really, Chrome in general doesn't work well. There's my slam on Chrome. But as you see here, we've got, I'm going to basically pull this in and pull the model up to show you all a massive window. The experimental model from Google shows this becomes a Category 2 hurricane. Some possibility gets up to Category 4 even, but you can see how quickly it diverges here in about a week or so. Actually, the mean track is very close to Bermuda, right over Bermuda. But we have several tracks closer to Florida. We have several up the East Coast, and we have several even east of this. So a very big spread at this point. And the thing hasn't even come off of Africa. So the European model has been fairly consistent in developing a hurricane as this system moves north of the islands here next weekend and strengthening substantially when it's east of the Bahamas the following week. We've seen model runs take it closer to Florida into the Gulf. We've seen some swing and miss at the East Coast. The latest is very concerning to the East Coast. You can see it coming up from the Outer Banks right up into New England, taking a very ominous track. But again, that's just one model, and it's just awfully early at this point. The AI forecast, on the other hand, has it a little bit closer to Florida at this point and actually making the turn back from the Outer Banks. This is kind of a Hurricane Dorian track almost, and then turning out and making a swipe on the Outer Banks. But again, very close to the European operational. The ensemble control is in a different camp. It doesn't develop it until it moves basically towards Jamaica and then heads westward towards Texas. And there are very few models showing that, but the GFS has kind of bounced that idea off. And the latest GFS actually has indicated that this system could come through Florida or the Keys and then go into the Western Gulf as well. So we don't want to rule that out. But interestingly, the GFS from before was in line with the European, taking a turn up the coast and moving right along the East Coast. And again, like I showed you all, there's such a spread at this point. It's just really, really too early to make the call. So we definitely want to watch it. There's strong conviction here from our operational models. This will become a hurricane. It's something you want to watch in the Caribbean as well, in case this shifts south. But we're going to have several days to watch. So at this point, there's no sense in going nuts over it. There's no sense in getting freaked out. It's just something we need to watch at this point. If it becomes a more serious threat next weekend or beyond, you, of course, will hear that from me. So I appreciate y'all joining me here today. I do want to leave you with a Christian word of encouragement, as I always do, ending my videos, because I am a Christian man and it's Christ first for me. The weather falls way, way, way below that. But Proverbs 22:4, the reward for humility and the fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life. We're in a world where people value themselves highly, as they should, but we don't value humility. We don't like to be corrected. We don't like to be wrong. We want to trust ourselves and not trust God. Instead of being humble to God, we don't want to be humble to anybody. Instead of fearing the Lord, when I say fearing the Lord, honestly, you love the Lord, but the Lord disciplines us, provides us with many challenges. But there's a reward that comes when you understand that God is good and he will reward you. He already has rewarded us through his son, Jesus Christ. But by staying humble, by loving others the way God has loved us, and by taking a few on the chin, eternally, there are riches and there's honor and there's eternal life waiting for you. when you stay here and you do battle with everybody and you battle yourself and you try to do the Lord's work for yourself, you're not gonna see those riches. You're not gonna have that honor, and it's going to be very difficult to accept what's coming eternally. It's going to be a constant struggle, a constant battle, and it's one I think we all face. But at the end of the day, being humble leads to those rewards. And I wanted to share that word of encouragement with you, not as a word of discipline, because I'm definitely not the most humble person in the world, but I am a follower of Christ, and I will continue to grow in Christ and get better and better at what I do because I trust in Him. I trust myself less and less each day, and I trust God more and more. And I encourage you to do the same. So I'm going to leave you there, but I will catch you all this weekend. I hope everybody has a great Friday evening. God bless.